So this episode is for the US FDA. Just a quick regulatory overview for medical products, combination products, and medical devices. We have one regulator for the most part, and that is the Food and Drug Administration. We call them FDA. In the US, although we have a classification system, it's not really based on risk. We don't have rules like other countries. Instead, we have precedents. So FDA likes to assess the risk of a product based on the current products that are on the market and have proven to be safe and effective. So although we can say theoretically that the US has a risk classification 1, 2, 3, and we can correlate that in this chart to the European classifications, it's not exactly accurate because we don't have rules that you use to classify a device. So we are often, in the US, we have to look at every feature, promotional claim, and attribute of a device, try to find a precedent on the market for it to compare it against, and that will determine the classification. Almost all products in the US go through what's called a 510K pathway. Very few products are considered high risk class 3, which is a PMA pathway, and some products are low risk, which means they do not require a 510K review before going to market. So here you can see a little bit of an overview of the process, what's required. All medical devices need to be registered and the established and listed post approval if approval is required. So in this case, if you have a class 1 low risk device which does not require a 510K, you still need to register it, but you can do it immediately. The reason this chart has 510K checked for all 3 boxes is, like I was saying, not every class 1 low risk device is exempt. Not every class 2 moderate risk device needs a 510K. And there are some remaining class 3 devices which are still fall under the 510K program, although FDA is phasing those out. But the general rule is that most class 1 low risk devices are exempt. Some class 2 devices may be exempt, and there's no class 3 devices which are exempt. So some type of a pre-market review on class 3 is required before marketing the product. And here it just reiterates what I had just said. The 510K exempt, most low risk devices may be marketed without an FDA pre-market review, but we always recommend to check with us first because each device is different and unique and the rules do not always apply. 510K is the most common regulatory pathway in the US. It includes most of the moderate risk devices which are cleared for marketing. So FDA is not actually approving the safety and efficacy of these devices, they're just clearing it. What FDA is saying is that they're not guaranteeing the safety or effectiveness, they're just claiming that the device is equivalent to products already legally on the market. And that's where the predicate comes in. So we find a predicate device similar to your device, and we take on that product code and we design the 510K around that substantial equivalence discussion. De novo is more of a regulatory roundabout. When a device is clearly a moderate risk, not a high risk, but there's no predicate because it's very unique, FDA has to create a new regulation for that product, and that is done through what's called a de novo. And the de novo will allow a 510K styled review to be done and a new regulation to be created for that product, Once a de novo is approved, FDA down classifies it automatically immediately to a 510K. So it's an advantage to when you have to do a de novo because you're the first on the market. The disadvantage is you do all the hard work and others can just use you as a predicate afterwards and have an easier regulatory pathway. Pre-market approval is the only real review and approval process of FDA. It's very rare. There's only a small number of devices which go through this pathway. It's very long, very expensive, but FDA does stand behind the safety and efficacy that can help sometimes manufacturers with post-marketing activities. HDE, that's a humanitarian device exemption for when there's a disease which affects less than 4,000 people per year. A lot of companies don't want to make devices for that disease because it's hard to make money. So FDA has created like an abbreviated PMA process, which has lower requirements and quicker review times for companies who want to uh, market a high-risk device for a low, small patient population. It's to encourage manufacturers to try to treat um, uh, diseases which only affect small populations. As far as local representative and holder, if you do not have an office in the US and you're from overseas, then yes, you'll need to have, upon approval and marketing of your product, you'll need to have an agent. A US agent is available in the US so that the FDA, they really can't spend a lot of money, so they don't want to be calling people at internationally with international rates. FDA doesn't use Skype or other types of software to call. They just use landlines. So they want to be able to call somebody here in the US to act as a go-between to inform manufacturers about questions, concerns, or problems after the product is being marketed. As far as the average cost and time frame, um, so like I said earlier, every manufacturer must register. It's an annual fee. It's just over $5,000 per year. And they can basically begin marketing immediately. For a 510K, it's just a little over $3,000 for the 510K fee. These are for small businesses. If you're a very large business, the prices are higher, but it's about 90 days of review time, and with the same registration and listing fee. De novo's a bit more. That's 27,150 days. And there are no costs from FDA for an HDE. Also for a PMA, if you're a small company, your first PMA is free. And it's about 180-day review time. So here's some of the questions we get a lot of the time. Most companies that come to us for FDA, they already have CE mark, and they feel that the product testing and the information they pull together for CE a mark is appropriate for the FDA. Unfortunately, this is typically not accurate. FDA has specific ways that they want to see the products tested, and involuntary standards like 10993 or 60601, they're looking for only specific environmental conditions and extraction agents and details where many notified bodies might allow a number of combinations as long as it's within that internationally recognized standard. But FDA does not. FDA is looking for a specific approach, what they consider the worst case within that standard for testing. So we try to get involved early with clients. We want to be involved in the product testing, overseeing the design and trying to give any early inputs we can to save the client time and money later in retesting or redesigning or whatever is needed to get the FDA approval. We have partner labs that we use. Our labs are mostly based in the US. They know exactly what FDA is looking for in each test, as do we. They work with us. They give special pricing and prioritization. So if a client wants to do a submission, the FDA, and they haven't done product testing yet, we would be happy to offer quotations for doing that testing. We're not trying to make money doing product testing. We're just trying to prepare better applications for better outcomes, better FDA decisions. A good, robust test report in a 510K will help us get approval faster with less burden. So having a CE technical file may save some time in an FDA submission, but not necessarily. And sometimes it may not. As other questions we get is with the product testing. Part of our 510K review is we review the existing test reports in English only, and we'll review them, and if we have recommendations, we'll make them ahead of time. This way, when when we submit a 510K for a client, they're aware of any risks, whether it be with the testing methods, the data, or any of the design attributes. Anywhere where there's a risk we feel is a concern, the client has the opportunity to proactively make changes before submitting, or a client may say, okay, I understand the risk, I accept it, let's submit anyways and see how it goes. As far as FDA being the only registration in the US, for many products, it's true. But there are some products where additional approvals are required. For example, antimicrobial coatings, even if they're simple, like silver or copper, the coating itself may need to be registered with the EPA. If you have a mask but you're claiming N95, it needs a NIOSH certification in addition to FDA. If it's an IVD and you want a CLIA waiver so that the labs who use your IVD don't need to get CLIA approval, CLIA waiver could be also part of the submission. And then there are local, state requirements. Some states require certain devices to be registered at the state level. And there's FCC for certain RF type products, and certain radiation emitting products require annual reporting of radiation safety. And then post-approval products will need UDI labeling, and we'll have to enter the labels in what's the FDA has a database called GUDID. They get entered, and there could be other types of requirements too, especially for combination products. If you're incorporating a drug or a biologic into the product, if the primary mode of action is device, the regulatory pathway might be a device pathway, but there may need to be some drug or biologic people from the FDA consulting into the project. And as far as once a lot of companies will ask, once we have FDA approval or clearance, are there other things we need to comply with? And of course, there is, very similar to Europe. We have the labeling will be cleared as part of the device design through the 510K, but there are other labeling requirements that are specified in Part 801 to help manufacturers make labeling changes without requiring a new 510K. Medical device reporting is it's the adverse events. When patients get injured, they need to file a form. Voluntary recalls and corrections. As talked about earlier, establishment registration, medical device listing, that's after it's approved, or if it's exempt, it's the $5,500 per year to renew the registration of your company each year and your devices. The FDA has a quality system regulation. It's very similar to the new version of ISO 14971, the 2016 version. and radiation reporting for certain devices. So we can always discuss that in further detail. There's if a combination product, if the product includes a biologic, then the pathway is a biologic pathway. If the product includes a drug with it, then the primary mode of action determines the regulatory pathway. And the primary mode of action, we always try to make that be a device because it's a much easier, less burdensome pathway. And with the device pathway, we submit any application documents to the device people at FDA, and typically they're already biased to keep it a device if possible. And so for combination products where it's a little confusing, whether it's a device or a drug, we like to try to get the device people involved early because often they want to think it's a device. Because sometimes you can look at a mode of action in two different ways. IVDs are also 510Ks with the CLIA waiver request often that are reviewed by a different branch. And there are also 510Ks which are used for biologics like blood bags. And those can be submitted as a 510K, but they're reviewed by the biologic people at FDA. Any drug that's used, the drug needs to be off patent and it needs to be no longer exclusive. The exclusivity, the 10-year exclusivity clause has to be up. Makes it difficult when you want to use a drug that is manufactured by a company who's not partnering with you and it's less than 10 years old. It's difficult sometimes to have permission to include that drug in your application unless it's under an OTC monograph. Or it is it's out of the exclusivity period and can be manufactured under different types of drug submissions. So something they call an ANDA. And so number 10, are there other things to consider which are not regulatory? Yes, so there are some things to consider that are voluntary to help you with your marketing. So for example, some cities, some states, some hospitals require a voluntary safety listing for active medical equipment to be sold in their jurisdiction or in their hospital. So when you're planning your electrical safety testing or EMC testing with one of the labs, by including the safety listing, the NRTL mark on the device, it will prevent obstacles from certain hospitals, certain cities, certain states from not allowing your active product to be used in their hospital. So it's from it's a proactive way of having a better outcome in sales to do that. Sometimes some state level board of pharmacies require that medical products be listed with their states, especially if it's durable medical equipment or home medical equipment. Some California has a rule about Proposition 65 and the labeling, which discuss the materials of construction as not harming the environment. And then there's some companies want to create a new reimbursement code. In the US, healthcare providers, when they use your device, they get reimbursed from Medicare primarily, even though we do have private insurance. And their Medicare has codes on what the reimbursement is, which dictates how much you can charge the healthcare provider for the device. Sometimes you can charge more for the device if you get a new reimbursement code approved for your device. So the healthcare providers, they want to use your device because they can get reimbursed more and you can charge them more. And we also have the green dot in North America, although it's not very well known, which is something you might be more used to in Europe. And just some quick last additional things to consider. the appointment of a U.S. agent after your device is approved, unless you're planning on opening an office or a location in the U.S., which can act as your agent. And as far as the time frame, we try to do successful, timely completions of the registration process. It really does depend on the quality of the information we submit to the FDA. We do want to have the highest quality information. It needs to look very well, so grammar, spelling, margins, formatting. Uh, FDA often will look at the application documents and it will give them a direct reflection of your company and the quality of your product, especially if it's your first time in front of the FDA and they don't know you or they don't know your product or your company. It's your first impression is the documentation. And sometimes if a company submits documents that are sloppy or they're not consistent, like they'll have a different intended use on several submission documents, the reviewer will already take a negative approach, come up with a bunch of questions to stop the review, and they really don't want to approve your product. It's always good to remember that the technical file that you submit to FDA, the 510K, it is going to give them an impression about how much you take quality seriously in your company and in your product. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your questions. And if there's any additional questions, please send them to us by email. And again, this was REGtalks with Aratsi Group for Turkish medical device manufacturers. And please stay tuned for the upcoming Kazakhstan, Argentina, April REGtalks opportunities. Here's our contact information as well, so you can contact your local representatives. So we would like to show you a little demonstration of license sale before we end today's conference call. So we are selecting just a random FDA 510K application from License Sale 2.0. It's just a general 510K for an endoscope workstation. So here we have the license sale project that we're showing as an example. Here's talks a little bit about the application. This is a 510K for an endoscope workstation. As I mentioned, it talks about the brand, the date that it was created. And here we have our project performance. So you can see the progress of the submission. We're at 3 days overdue right now. There are no issues. If there were a project issue, it would show up here and could be reviewed and addressed. Up here are the people who have access to this project. Each manufacturer can determine which of their employees will have access to the project to be able to upload documents or view documents. Here we can communicate with each other through messages. If you send me a message or if I send you a message, these will show up here and you can click on them and there'll be a text box, almost like a messenger service where we can post comments, also comments on the documents. Here, this is the application preview. If we wanted to do a preview of the application and we click here, we can see which documents are approved, which ones are under review, awaiting review, ones which were automatically populated by the system. This could be if this is your second or third device with license sale, the system automatically, it's basically artificial intelligence or machine learning. The algorithms learn as they go, and so they'll automatically populate the system. The more submissions you do with us, the better the learning is of the algorithm, and the higher the percentage of document population. And then of course this would be missing documents. So here you can see we're missing some documents, usability, the TNA statement, the SE discussion, the sterility information. If this device is non-sterile, If it's just the station and not the endoscope, then we would just open this and select that it's non-sterile and provide that in the submission so the reviewers aren't confused whether the device is sterile or not. Here's the software verification and validation, because any algorithm or firmware or app or program that has an algorithm needs to be part of the 510K submission. And then we can go through, these are the rest of the documents just to show you the status. There's a sample label for each of the components in the system and a user manual for each of the components. Some declarations and some FDA forms here. So this is a good snapshot overview, but you can also click on any of these to do some work in the file. So these are the documents under review. These show up here where we can click on a document, do some work on it, upload and download the document via an FTC to the desktop so you can work on it. These are the documents which are missing, and here is the system populated documents. So if we go to the documents that are missing, for example, click here. If I have a document from a prior submission or that I've received earlier through email, I can drag and drop the document here, or you can drag and drop the document there as well. And then once it's there, I could do an example. So I'll just grab a document here. I'll grab this PowerPoint presentation, I'll drop it here, and then here it will ask me what type of document it is. It's a regulatory document, and it's in English. There's no legalization for the US. It's device and process specific. It's for the imaging system, and I can upload the document. And then once the document is uploaded, that might take a second. Once the document is uploaded, sometimes you have to takes a moment, but it will show up down here under documents under review. We'll give it a little time to do that. Maybe I'll refresh the screen. It should be there. Also, here's the project overview. So I'll click on that. Just have to give it a moment, I guess, here. Okay, so here we go. So the project overview. This here shows the steps that go in to generate the project, conduct the readiness assessment, we lay it out, and then we manage the submission, we compile the dossier, we submit it to the FDA, and here are the screening cycles. And once the screening is done and we receive the certificate, we send it to the client. These dates will be entered here, and these will be selected as on hold or completed as appropriate. And so those are the two main ways to follow the submission. Here you can see the usability document, which we had uploaded. We can both share that and review it. And after we review it, we can say it's in review, we reject it because it wasn't accurate, or here we can approve it, and there the document's been approved. And then that document will move up here to the finish section. It just takes a moment, and then that'll come up here, and then that one will be done. This document will be locked. And that's pretty much it. We can also run reports, and they're run different applications. We can prepare reports for clients on the status of all of their applications. Yes, here you can see it's no longer under review now. It's no longer in the compliance missing section. It's now completed. So if there's no other questions, I will end this session. Thank you very much. Goodbye.